were sown. And it was here that three of the greatest civilizations of the ancient world flourished: Babylon, Assyria, and Sumer. Among their ruins, the faithful have long sought answers to the Bible's most profound mysteries, while archaeologists scoured these lands for the historical foundations of belief. Our quest for Eden is a journey back in time. First to Babylon, the last of these lost civilizations. Then further into the past to the Assyrians, fierce masters of the art of war. And finally, to a moment in the past so distant, only Eden could have preceded it. To Sumer and the creation of civilization itself. The great arc of the Fertile Crescent. Over the course of more than 6,000 years, this rich land, cradled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, gave birth to the first great civilizations. The Greeks called it Mesopotamia. We call it Iraq. By peeling back the layers of history here, we can trace the origins of our oldest stories and travel back to the deepest roots of faith. Our journey begins on the western edge of Mesopotamia in Israel. A chance discovery in 1947 would rivet the world's attention to archaeology and to the Bible. Two Bedouin shepherds are moving a herd of goats along the cliffs of Qumrun, a few miles east of Jerusalem. In the sun-baked desert, they notice a small cave obscured by a rocky slope. Curious, one begins to climb. It's not uncommon for ancient and valuable artifacts to be found along these bluffs. Inside the cave, the shepherd discovers the wreckage of ancient pots, leather scroll fragments, and some papyrus sheets, all untouched since the time of Jesus. These writings by an obscure Jewish sect called the Essenes would come to be known throughout the world as the Dead Sea Scrolls. In surrounding caves, hundreds of ancient scrolls would eventually be unearthed. One of them would prove to be the earliest known version of the Old Testament, including the crucial first 5 books, known to the Jews as the Torah. The Dead Sea Scrolls instantly became the focus of a tremendous international uproar as scholars and theologians fought over their ownership and their meaning.
And the sensation was outstanding. This was described as one of the most outstanding archaeological finds anywhere. So they are very precious to the Jews because they are Jewish. It comes from a very crucial period in Jewish history. They are very precious to the Christians because they are contemporaneous with John the Baptist and Jesus and so on. So they are very informative, but beyond that, we have a great emotional attachment to this library.
The Bible has always been a book read from 2 points of view, the sacred and the historical. A traditional Torah is always written by hand. The words are read aloud as the scribe writes, so they become a living prayer, and each Torah is considered holy from the moment it is written. But the historical accuracy of the Bible has never been so easily confirmed. It's an effort that continues to this day.
Some of the books of the Bible are excellent historical books. As a matter of fact, the earliest historical books that we have, and quite accurate, because we have cross-references from other sources, and they are found to be mostly, very precise. So they are very important.
The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls was the most famous event in biblical archaeology, but it was by no means the first. The urge to explore biblical history has a venerable tradition. It's a search that began in the Holy Land, but would lead to Mesopotamia. Throughout history, crusaders, mystics, and believers have been drawn to sites where the great Bible stories took place. But with the arrival of the 19th century, a new kind of pilgrim sought to fortify their belief in the Bible through the infant science of archaeology. Surely, there could be no greater confirmation of their faith than to prove that biblical history was true.
The first aim of the biblical archaeologists was to locate sites mentioned prominently in the biblical narratives and to see if any illustration of those tales could be found. To use the ancient pottery, the ancient city walls, the ancient weapons as illustrations of biblical stories that all of them had been taught from their childhood.
Fueled by the excitement of early finds, scholars from all over the world raced to stake out claims in a kind of biblical gold rush. Competing British, German, and French archaeologists descended on the Holy Land. Teams of theological detectives digging for both God and country.
The prestige of each of the European nations in the Holy Land was measured by the kind of biblical discoveries that they were uncovering, and one of the most intense diplomatic and political battles that occurred in the history of biblical archaeology was the discovery of the famous Moabite stone.
In 1868, deep in the land of Moab, Bedouins of the Bani Hammada tribe stumbled onto a mysterious stone tablet buried in the desert. The tribesmen were no strangers to the antiquities of the area or to their value to Europeans. The first Westerner to hear of the curious black stone was the Reverend Frederick Augustus Klein. He immediately set off through the bandit-infested wasteland, accompanied only by a few Bedouin guides. Klein was a missionary, not an archaeologist. When he first saw the peculiar basalt carving, he felt a rush of excitement, suspecting the black tablet might confirm his deepest-held beliefs. He examined the stone and made a rough impression of the inscription. It was in a language Klein didn't recognize. Back in Jerusalem, he sought help deciphering the stone. As news of the find began to spread, the streets and bazaars buzzed with rumors of a great discovery. The writing on the stone proved to be a Moabite king's account of a battle also described in the Bible. For the first time ever, here was written confirmation, etched in stone, of a story from the Bible. Two sources for the same event. For the faithful, it was the proof they'd been looking for, concrete evidence of the Bible's historical accuracy. Many sought to buy the stone, but the Bedouins had reason to be wary. In the past, they'd been cheated, even robbed by European treasure hunters. Assuming that anything so highly prized by Europeans must contain gold, they dumped the stone into a fire in an attempt to break it apart. As fire heated the stone, they poured water over it, again and again, until finally it exploded. They found no gold, and the stone was destroyed. The first archaeological confirmation of a Bible story, the first corroborating evidence ever found in the Holy Land, was shattered. The loss of the stone was devastating. but it didn't end the biblical treasure hunt. Now that the Bible itself was verified as history, it pointed the way even further into the past, back more than 2,500 years ago, to a great empire ruled from Babylon, to the very moment the Bible itself was born. The year is 586 BC. The armies of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, descend on Jerusalem with the wrath of an angry God. It is almost 6 centuries before the birth of Christ. The Romans have not yet even dreamed of empire. It is a dark chapter in the history of the Jews.